So this video is about why quantum mechanics is junk science. Therefore, by extension, the application of quantum mechanics on health, the quantum health, is just junk. It's bunk. It's silly. So I'm going to link two Substack articles that deal with the history of how quantum mechanics got its name, how quantum refers to quantus, Latin, meaning to quantify. The guy who first postulated light was particles or could be engaged or described by some sort of quantitative property. He said quanta, and this sort of became, this was in the early 20th century, and then it sort of evolved. The other article is a Neoplatonic retroductive analysis on magnetism and everything that spawns forth from it, which is basically all life and reality as we see. I won't elaborate on it too much here, but if you're interested in that, I think it's worth a read. It's linked in the description. So in the early 20th century, mid 20th century, this time period is kind of when the foundations of the quantum were laid. They had the first crackpot celebrity actor scientist, Einstein, right? So a lot of Einstein ideas are a jumping off point for quantum mechanics and scientists who went into the quantum space, for lack of a better term, based on his lens of perception of science, scientism, whatever you want to call it. So the quantum mechanics approach is something that the elite pushes. You've probably seen this guy, Michio Kaku, who's a quantum physicist or something like that. He's always on TV. He's usually speaking at public things. He's writing books, and he's promoted. He's allowed to do this. He's with Neil deGrasse Tyson sometimes, who's another celebrity scientist, actor. So, keep that in mind. If the principles of quantum mechanics were so great and provided a perfect understanding of our world and how things worked, wouldn't we be able to extrapolate things and use that to make technology to make our lives better? It's demonstrably so that this is really not the case. Okay, for instance, Elon Musk is still using, propulsion, rockets to go up into the air, and that's technology that's been around since the 60s, since the 50s. So what's going on? There's a reason they don't teach people about Steinmetz and Tesla, who are basically the real fathers of the modern world of science and technology. Charles Proteus Steinmetz, Nikola Tesla, you look them up. I'm not going to linger on too much about them, but Steinmetz, he was the guy. He had a rare genetic disorder where he had a dwarfism, and he had some sort of posture issue. He didn't have children because of this, but he was a super genius. Bell Labs, who later became AT&T, right? They basically said, okay, what do you need? What do you want? And we'll give it to you. And he had just massive labs and stuff built for him to do research and experimentation. That's how this guy was. There's also a picture of Charles Proteus Steinmetz, as well as pretty much every other significant scientific mind of the 20th century. They're all in a picture together, and Steinmetz, he is right in the middle of everybody else. I think even Einstein might be in this picture, but there's a lot of guys in that picture. A lot of important people who did a lot of scientific stuff, basically where, like I said, where our modern world comes from. And some of it doesn't come from, right? It's like so much of that was covered up with what Tesla did. Fun fact, Donald Trump's uncle was actually part of the government team who went into Tesla's works and things after he passed away, and was in charge of overseeing all that. Kind of interesting. Anyway, getting off topic a little bit, I digress. So we can very much see, especially if you read the articles, how quantum mechanics is not a solid foundation of what reality is. It's a lot of convoluted, complicated jargon and regurgitation of things that don't really exist, such as the interaction of particles, which I'm not really a materialist, meaning I don't really know that if atoms and electrons and protons and neutrons and quarks and all these things really exist, in the sense that they can be what do I want to say, accurately defined. So there's really no proof of them, and they're all theoretical, right? And I mean, if we know all this stuff, and to a point, this lens of science is good at predicting things to a point, but they still have something called the Heisenberg uncertainty principle, which is where we expected it to do this and it didn't do this. It's a really fancy way of saying that, like, well, we don't know what's going on and why it's going on, and we can't explain it. So if it was so great and complete, why can't it do that? Again, reading the Substack articles will be helpful in another perspective of how our reality is constructed and destructed through magnetism, not through particles and all these things. So it goes also without saying that light is not a wave or a particle, right? A wave is what something does. Look at this water here. Look at these ripples. Little waves, you could call them. When the water is making a ripple, is making a wave. Is a ripple a thing? Is a wave a thing? No, the water is the thing. Just because the water makes a wave or makes a ripple, it doesn't change what it is, right? What something does is not what something is, right? Water makes waves, water makes ripples, it's still water. It's not anything different. Light is the same way. The double slit experiment has also been debunked. So again, that's also in the Substack article. You can read more about that. So, the idea that light's a wave and a particle, it has this duality, is false. So basically, where does this come into quantum health? Well, you have all these people like Quantum Quack Jack, who's full of crap. They take those principles, these flawed principles and understandings, and apply them to the human body. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say getting sunlight is bad, is not good. Of course, getting sunlight is good. I'm out here in the sun right now. Eating raw foods is good, obviously, yes. I'll make another video about how Ogenus was actually the first quote-unquote quantum health guy, and now all these quantum health people are trying to say, oh, Ogenus, he was up on his computer all night, so he's not a quantum guy, or he just talked about food, or he's wrong about detox. And I'll explain all that in a few videos, but this is already getting kind of long, so I'm going to wrap it up. But the idea that these people who do the quantum stuff, they still say, oh, we'll take ivermectin, and you should avoid artificial blue light, but you should drink this artificial blue dye. You should eat locally, even though what the hell does that mean? I mean, Quantum Quack Jack says, yeah, if you live in Florida, it's better to eat farm-raised vaccinated salmon with artificial food coloring than it is to eat pristine grass-fed beef or pastured pork or chicken from, Iowa or Missouri or Georgia or something, even just a state over. But where does local eating even really begin? Because if you live, for instance, in the United States, we have counties, right? So if you live in a county, like County X, and you live in a city, and County X is a city, no one is growing enough food or getting food in the city, right? It's in the surrounding counties or even in that outer layer of counties, right? So it'd be the second layer of counties, would probably be the next closest layer where you can get your food. Weather and light conditions differ from county to county. So to say that, you know, oh, you need to eat locally, well, like, where does that line really end? You could be getting the same light and weather climate conditions in another country on another continent. So how does that work? I mean, is that okay? I don't understand. I mean, it doesn't really seem to follow any sort of like consistent logic, especially when, like, okay, so if you're from Sudan and you decide to move to Mexico or Norway, you're not going to be able to get the foods that were suited to your local environment from where you were in Sudan, where you've been for I don't know how many years. Okay, so what you're just supposed to eat the foods there in Japan or Mexico or Norway, and that's going to be enough for you, even though you're different, you're not the same, you're not a Japanese person, you're not from Norway, you're not from Mexico. So there's it's a sloppy blanket rule, this local eating stuff. Now obviously local eating is good if you can do it, but of course, you know, so many of us who do the primal diet, we need to order cheese, we need to order butter. It is what it is. Even fruits for certain cleansing formulas, like you know, I can't get coconuts, mangoes, kiwis, bananas. I don't really even like bananas, oranges, citrus, that kind of thing. But I eat those and my health is getting better. So, you know, the other thing is cold exposure, and that's really not healthy either. Now, I'm not opposed to going for a swim, right? Like, I really wouldn't call this water too cold. I'd say it's chilly, but I mean, freezing is another story. I don't think shocking your body with freezing water is good. The argument there is that it creates biophotons, which is just another fancy way of saying your body is creating light, which your body does, you know, your mitochondria do whenever they expel energy. So, I mean, obviously your body wants to be the stasis of temperature, and if you're going to jump into freezing cold water, your body is going to work to make that temperature happen, because if you go below a certain body temperature, you die. But the body likes to get warm, doesn't it? You get a fever, right? So, I mean, I've had 104.7 fever for like 3 days straight, and then it went down to like 103, 102. I had like a week of a fever, and I got better. And I was taking hot baths, which helped me get better faster. By the way, when you take hot baths, your body also produces the same reaction of creating light inside the body. So you don't need to freeze your balls off to do that. Totally freezing yourself plus spiking your adrenaline and your cortisol. You don't need to do that, right? But like I said, going for a swim on a hot day, even a warm day, you know, and again, it depends. Your body may be primed for it. If you've got more fat on your body, it's going to be easier for you, etc., etc. Of course, there's other factors, but I'm not saying, you know, even if you wanted to take a cold shower, right? I mean, a cold shower in this water here is probably 58 degrees max, and that's like cold, but that's not like too cold. Like, that's okay. I mean, I don't think that's going to create the same level of stress as freezing temperatures. It's not going to be as dangerous, right? So, you know, there's just a couple points there. But essentially, read the Substack articles. You'll get a better idea of where I'm coming from and why quantum health is just kind of a scam. It's just kind of a new trend. Like keto, like carnivore, like even Primal's kind of devolved into that. It's just kind of it doesn't really like mean anything. It doesn't have any substance. So, yeah, take a look at those articles, and I hope you find them interesting.